Good afternoon. My name is Tom Jones, and I'm the Executive Director of the Faith Inclusion Network. And we're glad to welcome you to our webinar today about starting a disability ministry. We are pleased to have with us today Kristin Langford from With Ministries. And Kristin, actually, I'm working with Kristin on a With Ministries grant, and so at our church at First Christian here in Midland, Texas. And it's really a lot of good information, and I know she will bring us a good webinar today. So a little bit about Kristin. Kristin serves as the ministry coordinator at With Ministries, walking alongside churches through the Worship as One project to nurture belonging for children with disabilities. She draws upon 20 years of children's ministry experience to develop tools and insights that support inclusive ministry. And I know that she has all kinds of experience in developing and maintaining these ministries. So I look forward to hearing her, and especially since sometimes when we want to start these, we just don't know where to go or turn or know what resources are available. So Kristin is here for that and to help us understand what's involved. The way this will work is Kristin will give her presentation, and we're going to allow time for people to ask questions. So put your questions in the chat and the Q&A, and Rebecca Wolf will get those questions and field those, and we'll ask Kristin to respond at the end of this webinar. So without any other further introductions, I want to present to you Kristin Langford.
Thanks, Tom. All right, so today we're going to be talking about starting a disability ministry. And I first wanted to start by sharing what the vision of With Ministries is, so you kind of know the perspective that I'm coming in from. So With Ministries, as our name shares, encourages you to do ministry with those with disabilities and not to or for people with disabilities, but it's a very mutual experience for everyone. We really want to build faith communities where congregations are truly with people experiencing disability, where all are known, have opportunities to serve and lead and worship alongside fellow believers. Our mission is to provide resources that help support faith formation and congregational inclusion for individuals with disability. So we're talking about doing this all as much as inclusion as possible. Before we start anywhere else, I really want to talk about the why improving accessibility and inclusion matters. I wanted to share a quote from a study done by Dr. Eric Carter at Baylor Center for Disability and Flourishing. They do all of our research. And his quote is, "Inaccessibility in these and other areas was said to convey a clear message about who did and did not belong, and impacted the degree to which participants felt welcomed, wanted, or wounded." So when we talk about accessibility, we are not just talking about logistics or compliance, we're talking about true belonging. These words remind us that people aren't just noticing what's available, they're interpreting what that means. So when someone encounters a barrier, whether that's a physical barrier, social barrier, sensory barrier, it doesn't feel just like a small oversight. It can feel like the message is, this space was not made with you in mind. Just why this is so important. And if we're talking about accessibility, communicating belonging, or the lack of it, we want to talk about who is impacted by this. So before we jump into some strategies and tools, we're going to pause and consider the scope. 1 in 6 children experience disability. 1 in 4 adults experiences disability. And half of all seniors over 65 report some type of cognitive impairment. That adds up to 1 in 3 households have at least one family member who's impacted by disability. I want you to think about your own context. Are you seeing these numbers reflected in your congregations? Are the spaces that you lead set up for every person and every family to truly belong? So let's talk about first we got to talk about this is the really hard stat. Half of families have left a church because their child with disability was not welcomed or included. That's 48%. To put that in perspective, when the study was originally done in 2013, the number was 1 in 3. So this problem is getting worse and not better. And about a third of those families have had to visit multiple churches to find one that truly welcomes them. We spoke with a mother recently that visited 16 churches before finding one willing to embrace her baby with Down syndrome. So I'm going to challenge you here. Can the faith communities represented here commit to changing this experience for families in their own communities? When you look at these numbers, it is very clear that it's not a side ministry or a niche concern. This is the reality of people who are already in our places of worship and our communities. So the question is, what can we actually do? How do we move from awareness to action toward creating spaces of true belonging? So first step, start with prayer. Pray for change and growth. Pray for the leaders in your faith communities. Pray for the hearts of families bravely coming to worship. Remember that half of them have left because they weren't welcomed or included, so that they're bringing in some hurt. Pray for the volunteers who've been serving for 30 years and are going to be asked to adapt new, different practices. And then pray for your congregation to catch the vision and shift from tolerance to embrace. Then the next step, we encourage you to build an accessibility team to join those inclusive efforts. As I'm talking, feel free to start jotting down names of people that are on your mind that you think could be part of this core team. This team should include the perspectives of people with disabilities and their family members, because their perspective is invaluable as they are the ones experiencing the barriers. You want to include staff members because the staff is typically the ones who will be implementing the change, or key volunteers if you don't have a full staff that does this, but somebody that is going to actually be doing the work to implement the changes. And then others with relevant experience. So think about speech language pathologists, occupational therapists, special education teachers, other service providers. They bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table, and they can see things with a perspective that often we don't have. We have seen so much success in churches that have a core team who will assess the spaces, efforts, processes, and practices to support inclusion. You don't want to do this alone. This isn't a solo job. Bring that team around you. Once you have your team, you're going to gather together and reflect as that accessibility team. You want to reflect on and share experiences and observations, as well as ideas for making improvements toward creating a greater sense of belonging for people with disabilities. So with ministries, we have some tools to help you think through some of these different aspects. And one of these tools is based on this wheel that you see here with the 10 dimensions of belonging by Dr. Eric Carter. We have a pathway to belonging that will look somewhat different for each individual and each religious institution. But there's 3 simple steps. The first one is gather, then reflect, then plan. So first you've gathered your team. We've already talked about that. Now it's time to reflect. This is a great opportunity to hear stories of your members with disability. Learn what their past experiences have been and what they hope for their experience in your place of worship. You want to think through each of the dimensions. They start with present, invited, welcomed, known, accepted, supported, cared for, befriended, needed, and loved. But I'm going to share the example of the questions from the invited dimension. So, is your faith community pursuing people with disabilities and their families in your neighborhoods through active invitations? Are you inviting people? Oftentimes, people with disabilities don't know if they are welcome and if their supports are available for their child, so they're not going to step in. So, you need to invite, pursue, ask if they want to come join you. What might be keeping your congregation from extending those invitations? So think through, like, why are we hesitant? What's our hang up? Why are we not willing to ask, invite? And then how might you more actively invite the involvement of people with disabilities and their families? After you have gathered and then you've heard some stories and you've reflected on different things, one example would be these 10 dimensions, then it's time to start planning. So at this point, your accessibility team and prayerfully your whole staff will begin planning for people with disabilities to join you in each and every space, ministry, and service opportunity. You're going to take this one step at a time. Don't feel like you have to make huge, big changes all at once. Just one step at a time, one space at a time. Your leadership and accessibility team will identify and begin learning and implementing some best practices. Consider utilizing tools and resources from ministries like WITH to equip your congregation to support all people. I'm going to share some easy first steps and include some of our resources, but there are other things out there if you want to keep looking. All right, so offer an extravagantly warm welcome. So we have a welcoming guide. You can see that here. Many families have shared that they felt ignored or avoided at church, often because leaders were not sure what to do, what to say, or how to approach an individual with disability. So some tips for starting that conversation that you will want to share with as many people as you can that interact with visitors. So that's the classroom teachers, that's your welcome guides, it's your greeters at the doors, all of these kind of people. So you want to, first of all, approach with a smile. Nonverbal cues communicate more than we realize. That warm greeting helps families feel seen and welcomed. They emphasize the power of simple gestures such as being greeted and treated kindly as rare for some families impacted by disability. So as a church, you can stand out when you offer that really, truly warm welcome. Don't make assumptions. So you don't want to assume someone with a disability needs your help. It's also important not to make assumptions about someone's level of understanding based on their communication style. So even if they cannot verbally respond back, that does not mean that they are not fully understanding what is going on. So you really want to honor and respect everyone's ability, whether or not they can communicate back with you. And then finally, speak directly to the person with disabilities. Oftentimes, people with disabilities are completely overlooked or ignored as people speak only to their caregiver. Greet that person directly and say, "Thank you. We're so glad you are here." Make eye contact and engage with that person at their age level. So you want to be really cautious not to use that childlike tone, especially when you're talking to older children, teens, and adults. These small actions communicate care, respect, and inclusion and make families feel valued from the very first interaction. The next thing that you can do as you're planning is improve communication. And one of the simplest and most effective ways to improve communication in your ministry space is through visual schedules. Visual schedules are such low-hanging fruit because they're super easy to implement, and yet they have a really big impact for everyone, especially people who are neurodiverse and experience anxiety, but really everyone benefits when they know what's coming and can understand what's happening. Visual schedules provide that clear structure. They help people anticipate what's coming next. promote independence, and reduce stress. There's so many different ways to create visual schedules. As a church or nonprofit, you can access Canva Pro for free. So go ahead and get that account and you can use that to create your visual schedule. Super easy. We do have a planning guide as part of our accessible KidMin kit to help you think through different options. But it's not hard. Just do something for this coming week. As you get ready to see what is going to happen in your classrooms, you can just put little pictures next to it. And then finally, you want to create sensory-friendly environments. I love this quote from Alexander Den Heyer. When a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. If people are not thriving in your ministry or unable to participate fully, the focus should be on changing the environment rather than the person. So consider equipping your ministry spaces with some simple sensory supports. Tools like headphones, weighted lap pads, visual timers help individuals stay engaged and participate more fully. You don't need to go get everything all at once. Don't look at this list and think I got to go buy everything on that list. Just start with a few tools that meet the needs of the people that you have currently in your environments. If you have limited budgets, which we all have limited budgets, right? Consider creating something like an Amazon wish list and sharing that out, or asking families to help provide resources. There might be an older member of your congregation who wants to help in this way. They can't serve in the classroom, but they might be willing to buy some headphones or something like that. So share it broadly, and you might be surprised at where things come from. At the end of this presentation, I'm going to share with y'all my email. And if you email me, I will send you a copy of the sensory tools page that you see on the screen. And it has clickable links to all the different resources. So you can just look at it and see what it is. This is by no means an exhaustive list. These are just things that we have tried that we know are successful, and that's why we're sharing them with you. All right, the next step is move toward. David Morstad, in his book, Whole Community, shares the message of belonging is that if you're not here, we'll set out to go and find you because we are not complete without you. This is where the posture of the faith community really comes into play. Are you excited to welcome new families? Are you ready to move toward people with disability? You do not have to do things perfectly. You don't have to plan for every possible contingency before you welcome families impacted by disability. All you need to have is a willing heart and a willingness to move toward. So first step, get to know the families and individuals already present in your environment and spend some time understanding how you can better support their presence in worship, community, and discipleship efforts. One way you can do this is tools like this accessibility plan and interview guide. This resource gives you some language to ask questions about how to best support individuals with disability, even if you have no prior knowledge or experience with disability. If a family has indicated that they may need additional support, or if you're just observing behavior and realizing that there might be some support needed, we really recommend that you reach out and sit down and have an in-person conversation with the family. Go meet at the park, go have coffee, go for a walk, whatever creates that natural space for connection and it continues to express that welcome. This guide provides some statements that communicate the desire to support and encourage, along with some open-ended questions that allow families to share what they need. It's intended to be a starting point, not an exhaustive checklist. It helps ministry leaders and volunteers think intentionally about what each person needs to participate fully, while also building trust and relationships with the family. But even if you don't have this guide, just go start that conversation. Ask the questions. Ask what supports are most needed for that family. They know, they live every day in that to understand. All right. Next is gather your volunteers. So start having the conversations about why you are preparing for people with disabilities to be with them and how you will be incorporating practices that will benefit all people. If you register for a free account at withministries.org, you can access resources like these. Our posture matters, our words matter, and our actions matter to start casting that vision for your volunteers. And then you want to start educating your congregation and casting that witness culture. You don't want to have shush zones, no staring, no ushering out, no avoiding. We're going to move toward as a congregation. Share from the front about your vision to include people of all abilities. The more that vision is cast from the leadership, the more the congregation will get on board. And then finally, you want to worship with. Now you get to actually do what you've been preparing for, planning for, gathering, talking about. We understand that this will take immense flexibility, understanding, patience, a change of heart and attitude, and risk. But we at With Ministries believe to our core and know that it is worth it. We have seen it happen. We have watched churches boldly commit to unrestrained witness. We have watched a pastor in Georgia realize that the pews did not allow some members in wheelchairs to join or have the opportunity to sit with their family, as they would have been pushed into the back corner. So he got the saw out of the back of his truck and started cutting out pews. That is unrestrained witness. We've watched a children's ministry in San Antonio cover all of the overhead lights in their classrooms with fabric to create an environment that would be suitable for all kids. Children with higher sensory needs are now getting to worship, learn, and play with kids their age, as opposed to being siloed away in the sensory room. This is unrestrained witness. We could go on, but the message here is, what can your congregation do to practice that unrestrained witness? So you start by praying for change, then you build that team around you, then you gather and reflect, then prepare, move toward, and then finally worship with. So here is my information. The QR code there is to access an account, the free account that you can sign up to get those resources that I referenced earlier. And then there's my email. If you would like to email me, I can share with you the sensory tools. That's what I got.
Thank you, Kristin. We'll turn it over to Rebecca Wolf, and she'll give you some questions that some people are wondering about.
Okay.
Sure. Well, first, I will thank you for all the good overview, and I'll start with a few questions from our attendees.
Okay.
One person was asking about one of your statistics about 1 in 2 families having left the church, or approximately that. And the question was, is that based on families of children with disabilities or all the families in the
It's
churches?
families of children with disabilities, and the research is also showing, so they interviewed 350 families, and that research is showing that those families want more engagement than they are currently having. So I know that the trend is sort of a lot of families are leaving the church because of different reasons. Actually, families impacted by disability want to engage with the church. So it's backwards of what some of the other people are seeing. So it's, yeah, 1 in 2 families impacted by disability are leaving the church because their child with disabilities was not welcomed or included.
Okay, and maybe they're wondering, was that from your study or where are the statistics
Baylor
from?
University is the one who does our research. So it's Dr. Eric Carter. I think that the paper that it is about to be published that has that information. But if you reach out to the Center for Disability and Flourishing at Baylor University, they can give you a little bit more details about it.
Sure, maybe we can um, provide some links to that later for
Yeah,
people who are
absolutely.
interested. I think that's helpful to know because you offered some excellent statistics. And another person who often joins our programs is autistic and going to seminary, planning to start a church and disability ministry in the future. Um, I'm not sure if it will be focused on autism, but she's asking if you have any tips, perhaps even for maybe neurodiversity focused or just in general for someone who is an aspiring clergy person.
Oh, wow. I would say, first of all, go for it. I don't let others steer you away from that passion that God has put in your life. So I would, yeah, say continue to pursue. There is a pastor, his name is Lamar Hardwick. He wrote a book called Disability in the Church. But he also is a pastor with autism, and he might be someone that would be a great resource for you to connect with. I don't know how easily accessible he is, but he might be someone that would be great. And I think also know that you have gifts and talents to share, and that God created you uniquely. So just continue to follow that passion. That would be my best tip. Don't let it, I don't have any specific like do this, do that, but I would just say keep moving forward because we need every single person represented. And you have a perspective that others don't. So that would be great. Yeah.
Thank you. We've actually had Lamar as a speaker before
Okay, yes, perfect.
during Autism Awareness Month in conversation with an autistic rabbi. So I know that that participant has probably joined for that. So hopefully we can share more resources about for aspiring clergy in the future.
Yeah, I can certainly ask my boss, Rebecca. So if that person wants to email me, I can touch base with her and she might have some more resources. Since I spent my world in children's ministry world, I have a few less those resources.
You're right. Your specialty is children ministry, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Well, we can also ask about that too. I may ask about that.
Yes.
There's a few more questions coming, so I will ask those first. One question is, are supports intended to be general or anticipatory, or specific to the individuals currently in your midst? How do you balance both realities?
That's a great question. So yes, both and. So there's something called universal design for learning. And so you want to look at everything through that universal design lens. So you want to do things that are best for generally for everyone. So things like the best example I can think of off the top of my head is the doors that you can push the button and they open the door automatically. That's a universal design thing. They benefit people in wheelchairs who need that. But how often do I walk through the door with my hands full and I just push the button because it's easier, or because I'm lazy and I just want to walk through the door and not have to pull it, or whatever the reason? Like those buttons are there and they benefit everyone. So things that we can do, like visual schedules, creating a more sensory friendly environment, make it better for the whole. And then you want to sit down and have those conversations to find out what specifically is best for that child. So if you have, or individual adults even, if you have a kid that loves cars, it might be, if you learn that from having conversations with mom and dad, then you can have cars ready for him or her as they come in the door. So they can grab those cars, and it's going to help put them at ease right as they're coming in. So some supports are going to be individual, and you're going to figure out what's best for that specific person. And then some things you want to look broadly and just make your environment more friendly for everyone. Does that answer that question?
Um, hopefully it does. So maybe this is also along the lines of how do you focus on, do you focus on particular areas based on feedback? There's a few questions about how do you prioritize what the needs are. And I didn't ask specifically because the other day we had a whole webinar about inclusion committees. They were talking about needs assessments. Could you mention, does with ministries, do you do needs assessments, or how do you decide or help people decide what to focus on? I think that ties into this question about, are you anticipating what people's needs will
Right.
be in the
Yeah.
future or the current needs?
Right. So, having that accessibility team sit down and have those conversations, that's why we encourage to have people with disabilities present, whether that's the parents or the actual individuals with disability, because they can tell you what it is that are the needs. And then you, as your team, you can prioritize those needs. So I would say for sure, start by meeting the needs of the people you currently have, because they're there. They've already invested in you, in your church, in your um, synagogue, whatever that, like your place of worship. So you want to make sure that you are supporting those individuals. So I would say start having those conversations as your full team and find out where the barriers are. Start meeting those needs. And then over time, you might say, okay, well, now we have these things met. So let's figure out what are better ways to set up our environment so that more people feel welcome and feel like they can come.
So don't project too far into the future when you're
Right. I would,
starting.
yeah, start with who you have. Because you might, if you put in all of these things because you think you might need to have someone that is deaf be supported in your community, but they never come in the doors, but you are not supporting the people with autism that are currently in your community, you're kind of missing the mark. So you really want to support the people that are currently there. And then if you want to think more broadly about, like, if you have a deaf population nearby and you want to figure out how to bring them in, you'll have to find ways to support, but meet the needs of the current population.
Okay, that's helpful. And the same person also asked, how can you get feedback from individuals with non-visible disabilities in terms of what they need and how to support them?
Yeah,
Maybe
the
it's
invisible
easier.
disabilities.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, So this one's a little bit tricky because you don't want to walk up to somebody and say, "So I see that you're have some invisible disabilities." Right? Like that's not very friendly. And so hopefully over time, building that relationship, you will be able to ask some questions. I would maybe put a survey out to your whole congregation and say, like, what is it that, like, anonymous, even so that they don't feel like that they can't share what their struggles are. But if you ask, like, what do you need? What is would be better to support you as a whole? Then that might be a great way to get some feedback. And then I would say, like, we are starting to do this. We're starting to have these conversations. If you share that from the front, if you put it in bulletins or email announcements or whatever, I think people, if they see that you're making the efforts, they might be more willing to disclose that they need some extra support. Something that we really strongly recommend is putting those sensory tools like in the back of the service, and so people can pick them up on their way in. And you might be surprised at who chooses to take things and who doesn't. Or even in your children's ministry classrooms, if you have sensory supports, there might be some kids who take them and thrive because of them that you would not have known needed them. So just having the options out there sometimes will help, especially with those sensory things like weighted blankets or lap pads, headphones, fidgets. And fidgets are super cheap. So if they're, like I would never have thought that I needed a fidget, but I actually don't have one on my desk right now, but I almost always have one on my desk. And I mess with it when I'm doing meetings and things. So yeah, just having those things available will really help support.
So for just to clarify, for adults, it's good to do a survey and even an anonymous survey.
Yeah.
And do you have any samples or examples of surveys and or needs assessments? We were talking about this the other day, and several people were asking for starting. Do you have checklists, or later on, is there anything that we could share with people? Does With Ministries have these surveys and assessments type of
We have
resources?
some things, but I don't know. Let me see what I can share. And I can send it to you and then you can send it out. Is that possible? Or people can
Definitely.
email me. And so with the cohort churches that I have worked with, we have a self-reflection tool that I have done with them so they can kind of start thinking through, like, where do we think we are on this spectrum? So that might be something. I did an evaluation with each of the churches, but I never even shared the results with them. That was more for my learning to know how best to support them. So it wasn't really like I hesitate for people to feel like it's a scorecard. Like it's not, it's just taking the next right step. It's having that willing heart. The number one aspect of accessible worship, according to Dr. Carter's research, was postures of the church, whether the church was willing to step out of their comfort zone and welcome everyone. So it's really so much about having that willing heart and less about, like, did I pass this checklist of things that some outside person told me to do? It's getting to know the people that are in your midst and meeting the needs as they become available.
Sure, definitely the discussion and relationship building is very important. I think it's more people wanted just a not so much to follow rigidly, but just as a framework to guide them. I feel
Yeah,
like
for
that's what
sure.
people were asking.
Um,
And
I can send probably, so we have Dr. Carter's research on those 15 dimensions of belonging. I could send that, and that will share those 15 dimensions. So anyone who emails me, if you ask me for that, I will share that with you. It's a PDF version of our 15 dimensions of belonging. And it's a great framework to sort of think through things. And then we do have that accessibility interview guide that's part of our kit, the accessible Kidmin kit, that has like specific questions about how to support different individuals. So that would be the more individualized part rather than the whole church body part.
Okay, so you have special toolkits, you said?
Yes. Yeah, we do have that accessibility plan tool. And the accessible Kidmin kit is full of resources that are designed for kids ministry. So it has that visual schedule planning guide in there. It has some sensory things in there. So like how to look at your environments, each of the senses, how people process them, and then weight behaviors and how to adjust your environments to fit those different behaviors. It has how to have conversations, those hard conversations with families. Like when a family doesn't tell you that they have a child with a disability, how do you address that with the family? And we give you some language, some ideas, some language. So we have a whole kit of resources specifically designed for children's ministry, but it could be used more broadly than that, and with a lot of the things.
That sounds very helpful. Is there a big difference or is there a separation? I should have asked in the beginning between starting ministry for kids versus adults. I don't think anybody has asked that, but would you say it's like a separate, different process or you do
No,
it
I think
together?
a lot of churches find children's ministry as their starting point more out of necessity. Um, but our hope is that they will grow up and stay, right? So if they start in your church at 2, hopefully they stay in your church when they're 12, and they stay in your church when they're 22. So it's not yeah. I think a lot of people have that entry point of children because it's easy, it's there, they're seeing the need, it's in kind of, I have to do something in, but you have to plan for people to grow up, because so many churches stop at 5th grade or 4th grade or 6th grade or wherever their end of children's ministry is, and then they don't provide anything beyond that. So you want to be thinking through how to support. But I think my experience has been a lot of churches, that's their first entry point is children's.
The children. Okay. But I think it's important that you just emphasize to think about all the stages, all the life stages and
Yes.
all ages. And so
Yes.
nobody had really asked about that, but that was my own question.
Yeah.
And I see there's another question about strategies for finding people that are not in the church yet. I'm not sure exactly if that's in the scope of this, but another is do you partner with other outside organizations? And that ties into what this person is asking, bringing people in, like whether it's people with disabilities or partner organizations, or do you not tend to focus on that, but what's already present going on?
Well, I will say the better you support families in your congregation, the more the word gets out. I've seen so often it's word of mouth, because these families are sitting in therapy rooms together. They're sitting in schools together. Like they see each other in different places. And if they start, we have heard from so many churches that like they'll invite someone, the other mom who's in the room, because they said something about church and they were like, wait, where do you go? How did you find a place that supported you? And so we have seen that as a huge, but you have to support the people that are there so that they want to share with other people in their sphere. I've seen some churches go to group homes and work to partner with group homes, whether that's going into the group home and doing something there or inviting the group home to come to the church. I would encourage that when you don't feel like you have to wait till you're perfect, but when you feel ready, so you don't want to do it like tomorrow because you might not be ready yet tomorrow. But when you feel like you have some supports in place and have thought through that, then start sharing that when you promote your events. Like we have a sensory friendly environment for our Easter egg hunt, or we have just as you are promoting your ministry, you want to share like all abilities are welcome, things like that, so that people will find it. We have a whole tool that's brand new called Access Premier, and it is how to put that word out on your website, where to put it, how to put it, language to use. It is a whole built out website that gives you like little places to click to learn like why we made the choices we made. So it's like a model website. So just getting that word out there, like start sharing and people will find you. If they search special needs ministry in church or synagogue or mosque or whatever, I'm quite sure there's not going to be a lot of choices. So getting that word out there is important. And that's how they'll find you. I wouldn't necessarily like knock on doors asking.
But a good idea is to approach, you said maybe some group homes or some local organizations, and then the website itself. Maybe you could share, is that a software or something you add to your website, this access?
No, it's just a model site so that it gives you that information. It's called, if you go to our website and look under access, Access Premier is what it's called.
Okay, that sounds like a helpful resource for people who want to promote their programs.
Yes.
And then another question, does with ministries, do you have or do you recommend training or education once you have your disability ministry, like for volunteers or for helping onboard the volunteers and the lay leaders and the clergy? Do you offer or can you recommend training once you have your program?
Yeah, we are working on it. We don't have it yet, but we are working on it, hopefully in the not too distant future. We work with churches, so we're going to start another cohort. Tom was mentioning the cohort that we're working with his church. So we're starting another one in January, and that whole goal is to train and equip children's ministry leaders and other staff. There's a parent on the team and then a special educator or someone else with relevant experience, that whole team that I was talking about. And so we train them so that they can turn around and train the people who are with them. So if that cohort is something that interests you, again, you can reach out and I can let you know when we have opened up the application, probably the very beginning of the year. So probably January.
So you're saying that people in our program, they could register for your training, your cohort training?
Yes, for our cohort, yeah.
Oh, excellent. I think we should share about
I wish
that.
we had other training. We're working on it. No, we're working on it. We know we hear that a lot, but we haven't. We're still a somewhat new organization, only about 2.5 years old. So we're plugging away, trying to create those resources.
No, that's great. Whatever is offered, and just who is that aimed for again? The one coming up?
The children's ministry. So that is specifically for children's ministry. But as we've seen, like all changes that we're making in children's ministry benefit all kids. And then if all kids benefit, then hopefully that will spread beyond in those environments, and not just for kids, but for all ages.
No, that sounds great, and we'd love to share about that with people. And in the future, any other trainings you offer.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, Another question, can churches collaborate? Have you seen, it seems you help different churches. Are there any networks of churches or ways that churches can collaborate together and share resources or other
So the cohort is one way to do that. It's a great, I think they've all learned from each other a little bit, and that's been good. Um, we also have something called, I said Access Premier, but we have Access, which is like the step down from Premier, that we do monthly training, and it's an opportunity to connect with other churches in that environment. And so that is $30 a month. So it's a very low entry point for people to be able to connect with other churches. I would say yes. Find communities in your area that. So we have something in Dallas area. If you're in the Dallas area at all, Special Needs Connect. And I think there's one in Houston and one in San Antonio, which are churches that are thinking about disability. All come together and talk through different situations and scenarios. And so looking for organizations like that in your area would be a great place. And if you don't have one, then that might be something where you just kind of reach out to other churches in your area and say, hey, can we go to lunch? And maybe you could start one in the areas where you are. So it's a thought.
So the one you mentioned is in Dallas. I know Faith Inclusion Network originally started with that type of network in Virginia. So hopefully people can connect in their local areas.
Yeah. There's something really valuable about the face-to-face. The Zoom is great and it gets that word out broadly, but then there's also the face-to-face. So having some people in your community that you could get together with is helpful.
Definitely. That's why we're trying to get back,
Yes.
after the pandemic, it's a
Yes.
challenge.
Yes.
And just one or two final questions that I had. One is, what are some of the main challenges that you've seen people having? And like, what are the ways, if it's difficult to get, people convinced that this is important, for example, or if there are people that come to you with needs that can't be met, perhaps like it's beyond the scope of what can be met by a disability program. Just what are some challenges or what are ways that you've seen those challenges be addressed?
Yeah. One of the biggest challenges is changing the vision of that pity mindset. I'm doing this out of pity for you to a mindset of togetherness. And we're going to do this together and we're going to figure this out together. I think continuing to cast that vision is big. And having some of the hard conversations with, like, for example, in children's ministry with some of the volunteers, or if you in the sanctuary with a congregant who struggles with someone who is maybe not acting the way someone would want them to act in the sanctuary or whatever. So I think having those hard conversations, leaning into it, and continuing to share the vision and the heart makes a huge difference. We know it's not easy. I know it's constantly having to step into hard conversations and help others see this vision, but it makes such a difference in the congregation that it's worth it. We know it's worth it. So yeah.
So whether it's with the families or whether it's with the leadership, sometimes the
Right.
the discussion is the challenging part.
Yes. Yeah. And with the families, if you have a family that is just due to medical fragility or something like that, is just not able to come to the church, then consider being the church to them. I'm sorry, I keep using the word church because that's where my brain environment is. So I apologize to everyone. But you want to go to them. So who can come sit at their house and do small group there? Who can bring a meal to that family? Who can send a text and say, we're praying for you. I know you have a big doctor's appointment or a big meeting, but being the church for that family, even when they can't step foot in your doors, finding that family is hard. But if they've been part and then they had to step away for some reason, then don't let them just wander. Keep them connected by reaching out and finding ways to engage with that family the best that you can.
Mm, right. Keep doing the outreach. And the last question, kind of a general question, is I know we talked about it and you don't want to focus on kind of checklists, but in general, how do you assess the impact that a ministry is having, like along the process, like not as, oh, we did this, but overall, like how can you sort of address whether it's within your inclusion committee or to the leadership of the congregation, how you're doing, how they're doing in the programs and the journey of what you're trying to do.
Listen to the stories. Ask for the stories. Story is such a powerful way. That's also how you can help change that vision. When you hear the stories, I mean, Tom shared a story of at his church of a family that came because the daughter was asking, and so I think hearing those stories and finding that passion will continue to ignite everyone to continue moving forward. It's not going to be a, well, we had five whatever this week, like it's not that easy. But if you hear about stories of change, about families who finally found a home after trying 16 places, things like that. So celebrate those stories, celebrate those wins, and that will make the difference.
Don't focus on uh maybe
It's not about numbers. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Right. It's more
Focus on the people that you have and the stories of change that are happening in their lives.
and the engagement
Yeah.
with whoever
Yeah.
is really engaging.
Yeah.
Well, that's really great. Um, I'll let Tom give us a final summary or some words.
Okay. Yes, thank you so much. And just to add on to that, it's the relationships that are important, not necessarily all the checklist and everything, but those relationships. And I really liked what Kristen was saying about, uh, in between time, between Sundays, checking on people and bring a meal, keeping a child so parents can get a break. A lot of different ways just you can help just by caring and by having a relationship with family. So um, I want to thank Kristen so much. Thank you so much for talking with us today. You have on your screen the QR code for With Ministry and Kristen's email. Uh, this is just so helpful to just talk with one another and share experiences and wisdom. And we plan on doing this some more so we can learn from one another and grow the ministries that we have in our churches. So, uh, again, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your experiences, Kristen.
Thank you so
This
much, Tom.
uh, Good to see you. And this has been recorded, so each person who registered will get a copy of this recording. And And so if you missed it, or if you want to share it with somebody else or with members of your congregation, feel free to do that. So uh, I want to thank everybody who attended. And coming up next week in the future, we have on November 5th a webinar on the images of God. Keith Dow will be talking with us. He's interviewed adults with intellectual disabilities and talked to them about their faith, their spirituality, and how they view God. And so we'll be talking with a few of those interviewees next Wednesday. And then after that, we will have a webinar on policies and procedures for your disability ministry. And Barb Stanley from Wonderful Works Ministries will be talking with us then. So until then, God bless you all for all the work you're doing and your interest in disability ministry, and may He continue to be with you. Until the next time we meet, take care.